In this video, I'm going to review the buyer process flowchart from getting the appointment to the closing. So the green through line in the middle of the page shows you first you're going to set the appointment. You're going to have a pre-qualification conversation. That way you can prepare for the actual consultation with the buyer. You'll sign buyer agency paperwork. Then you'll select, show, and sell a house to them, or rather help them make a good decision to buy a house. You'll make the offer, negotiate it, and then you'll take them through the contract to close period. So I'll go through a couple of fine points with each of these green bubbles, and then in a later video, we'll review the contract to close period in detail. So there are many ways to find a buyer, and oftentimes people will start by doing a lot of open houses because buyers who go through there are obviously looking to buy. Most of them will end up using an agent. So that's a great way to put yourself in the way of meeting a buyer. Another way is to tell everybody that you know that you're in real estate and you're open for business, that you're there to help buyers and sellers. Another way is to host buyer seminars, so maybe posting it on social media, inviting people to come, and posting it around and get people to come that way. So once you've set the appointment, you want to make sure that you have enough information to prepare for the appointment. So when you're pre-qualifying them, you're looking to understand their motivation to buy, their time frame to buy, how much money they've saved and what their financial goals are with the house, and also where they're looking to buy. You're going to send them an intake form. If it's been a referral to you, then I would send the intake form for them to fill out and give it back to you before you meet. If it's somebody that you're just meeting based off of a sign call or for the first time, you'll want to have the pre-qualification in a conversation. That way, if they don't know you, they're not likely to fill out that form. Once you've received the form back from the buyer or have enough information, really all I need to know is essentially the basic house type. So like number of beds and baths, in what area, how much they have to put down, and what their monthly payment goal is. Once I have that bit of information, I can then run closing estimates and tell them what price point they can afford in that neighborhood. So I'll prepare that search for them, and then I'll run a few closing estimates based on the knowledge I have from them. And then lastly, you'll prepare your contracts for them, the buyer agency contract, the consumer notice, and all the rest of the forms. So look at the PA state contracts, boot camp, and contract lessons for that. So you'll want to have those documents prepared for them to sign online or bring them on paper to the consultation, or you can use the one-page commitment to represent, which outlines the major factors of the agency paperwork, which is how much commission you're expecting, which basically comes from the listing agent and seller first, and then the buyer would make up the difference. And if you're charging a flat fee, and then the time frame for that agency contract. Now you're going to go on the appointment with the buyer. I recommend doing it at the office. Get them to come to the office. Everything's a negotiation. So if you can start to demonstrate your ability to control and navigate the situation and get them to be on your time frame, and locational preferences, then you are going to have an easier time helping them get to closing, because then they'll be used to you being in charge of the process. So ideally, you're doing it at the office. If you're at an open house, you might do an impromptu buyer consult right there. If you're having trouble getting them to come to the office for logistical reasons, maybe you do it at a coffee shop that's convenient for both of you. So in the consultation, you'll be demonstrating throughout the benefits of hiring a buyer's agent, which include, number one, the fiduciary relationship. Their interests and needs are put above everybody else's in the transaction when you are their agent. You're going to give them guidance and keep your conversations confidential. You'll get them in the houses fast. If they are contacting agents through Zillow or online, and there are already offers on the property, well, they're going to miss out, or the information might be stale. Maybe the property is already pending. But if you are their agent, they're going to get in right away. And agents who are more likely to work faster with agents than buyers who are calling on signs, especially if they already have a ton of showings. It's going to be a little bit more challenging for the buyer without an agent to compete with a buyer who has an agent. Ultimately, you're going to save them time. So if they have 10 houses that they want to see and they go see it with 10 different agents, well, you got to factor in the drive time, the appointment, and the drive time back. And most likely it will be with 10 different agents. Even if it's with 5 different agents, that's still at least 5 to 10 hours to see all of those houses. As an agent, I can get a buyer in to see 10 houses inside of 3 hours. So I'm going to be able to consolidate that and save them a lot of time. And they don't have to make the phone calls to set it up. And lastly, there's no cost to the buyer, especially if we're getting the commission from the seller, and minus, the only fee is that conveyance fee that we get paid at closing if we've done our job correctly. So once you're on the appointment, you're understanding their needs, interests, goals, you're conveying your value to them, and then you ask them to make a hiring decision. The next steps would be to get them pre-approved by a lender. I always like to find out their information and their situation and then recommend a lender that I work with. Typically, you want to recommend at least 3 lenders. So I will share with them my Homekeeper app, which has all my vendors in there. And I might say, hey, go to this person because they have this kind of loan that meets your needs. So once I don't need them to be pre-approved before we meet because I want to, learn more about their situation and actually make that recommendation for them. So they need to get pre-approved and sign that agency paperwork before they see homes. In the select, show, and sell period, you are helping them select properties that meet their stated goals. And then once you go see those properties, you'll play the buyer rating game, which makes them make a decision on every single house that they see, whether or not they would consider to buy it or not to buy it. That way, when you use the rating game, you'll only have 1 property, maybe 2, that they would actually buy. And it's going to be a property that they're excited about. You may also prospect for off-market properties. It's a great opportunity to use your buyer's needs to go door knocking or circle prospecting, calling in an area where there are home types that they want. And you might find yourself a seller who would sell to them, or you may find somebody who wants to sell and it's not right for your client, but that's a listing for you, which is great. So use each client can be the basis for lead generation to get another client. So now let's say they've seen a couple houses, they've decided this house is a 7, which is the top number in the rating game. You want to say to them, great, let me call the listing agent to make sure it's still available. That way, if they feel a pit drop in their stomach, then that means they really love the house, and that's a good thing. So then we're going to ask a couple questions of the lender. So you'll want to look that up in Agent University, the questions to ask, or ask the listing agent before you make the offer. That way you make the offer with the best information possible. And then you'll suggest the terms to the buyer based on what you know about the context of that offer. Are there other offers? Does the seller want to move quickly? Do they want to move slowly, etc. And then you go to the contract to close period, which will be reviewed in another video.